Welcome to Live from the Hive, the perfect companion for your weekly changeovers. Whether you're turning over a property, restocking supplies, or just using the quiet to reset, this podcast is here to keep you company. We'll cover practical tips, real-life experiences, and honest advice to help you run and market your holiday let smoothly and professionally. You'll also hear conversations with other hosts and industry experts, sharing what works, what doesn't, and how to keep improving. Just useful, down-to-earth content to support you between guest stays. In today's episode, I chat with Leo Walton, co-founder of Truvi, formerly known as Superhog. Leo has dedicated 12 years to the short-term rental industry, beginning at One Fine Stay. As a passionate advocate for the sector, he serves as Vice Chair of the Short-Term Accommodation Association and co-hosts the Good Morning Hospitality Europe podcast. When not immersed in the short-term rental world, Leo enjoys running, watching Manchester United, and spending quality time with his wife and two wonderful children. This is a great episode. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to Live from the Hive with me, Katie Bessant. Today we're joined by Leo Walton from Truvi, which you may know as Superhog. Leo, hello, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, Leo, I'd love for you to tell me and the listeners a bit more about your background and experience in the industry.
Sure. So I joined the industry, I think, God, I'm going back now, aren't I? 12 years ago, I want to say, 12 years ago. And I joined a company in London called One Fine Stay that had about 50 properties and had global ambitions, had raised some money. And my first job was to create a check-in process, a face-to-face check-in process for those guests. Straight out of university, loved it, fell in love with the industry. And it was around the time that the London 2012 Olympics was being prepared for. So it was a real boom in home sharing, and people that had never rented out their properties before were deciding that they wanted to escape for a month and get out of London and make money from them being in London, the Olympics being in London. So it's a really interesting time. And I think it was definitely pre the dominance of Airbnb, clearly. There were OTAs, there were channels, but it was still maybe slightly the good old days of people not being overly reliant on OTAs, and the industry growing because it was suddenly possible to book a holiday online without having to speak to a human being or without having to find it in a magazine or a brochure. So yeah, I've kind of ridden that wave, and then eventually during my time there, went on to lead the commercial team across Europe with supply acquisition, so the finding of new properties. And in that process, then spent a lot of time in Paris with the Accor team during the handover, because that business was sold to the Accor hotel industry. So got a real look at hospitality from the other side. So the incumbent, the hotel industry, buying into our industry. And then eventually decided enough was enough, and I'd go back into the startup world and rejoined Humphrey Bowles, who was someone I met at One Fine Stay on the Truvi Superhog journey, and that was about 6 years ago. And we've been plugging away at that ever since.
Yeah, and here you are today. So yeah, it's crazy how much the industry has changed, and I'm sure you, as you say, seen it from calling up a number on the phone and booking that way all the way through to today, and it's a very different world, isn't
100%.
it?
I think the interesting thing, so in my family, the holiday booker was my dad. I know in a lot of traditional families it would be like it's the mum's job, but it was when I talk to people about childhood, they always say, yeah, our mum found it in this magazine. It's always my dad. My dad, I think because he really didn't like his job as well, he always used to try and find the best holiday for us to go on. And again, it was a bit of a treasure hunt, really. You know, you'd find. I remember for a couple of years, maybe 3 in a row, we went to a place in Spain because we'd found a really nice villa that had a pool and was near the town with nice restaurants, and we didn't want to risk not going back there, so we just rebook it. So that story is the industry-wide story, where you would get so many more repeat guests because people wanted a banker, and they wanted to be able to interact with you when they arrived and get to know you over the time. And they'd never just leave a review of you about your property online. That's quite crass. They would talk to you and get to know you. They might even give feedback, but you build a rapport with them. That's different now. My parents never go back to the same place, and they're all over booking their holidays online. So it's not just us as a younger cohort that have started to work that way. It's also the people that were booking their holidays through magazines and through brochures are also online and are also doing it that way. And what it means if you're a supplier, as you know, and your listeners will know, is you can be sat in the bath at 11 o'clock at night, not working, and your inbox can be getting pinged with booking requests, and from anyone in the world, either through a platform or through a direct booking website. and it's a really interesting thing. It's a really wonderful thing. But with that then comes inherent challenges, and I do think that obviously taking advantage of the online booking and the idea that people want to book instantly, the OTAs have stolen a march on everybody else because they were the first to have those secure payment gateways that made people feel safe to book online instantly. So there's a lot of problems that have come with this liberation we've had in many respects.
Yeah, but also a lot of opportunity if you know how to go about it the right way. And I speak a lot on this podcast about sort of diversifying how you are receiving bookings and how important I believe it is to generate direct bookings for your property. But I'm really interested to hear your views on direct bookings as
Yeah.
opposed to some of the OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, I just think going back in that history of the industry, if you'd have said to a host 20 years ago that you will stop receiving bookings, your marketing mix will reduce to just being OTAs, people have said, no, I need to stop that. But with the frogs in the water that's being slowly heated up. And there's lots of people that have entered the industry in a post-OTA world that have built businesses and called them Airbnb businesses, right? But actually, the true root of hospitality is you are the supplier and you need to have a complete multi-channel marketing mix. What I read about, and I've got no experience of it, Katie, you'll know much more about this than me. What I read now is that if you play your cards right, you can get a lot of bookings from Instagram, right? And so there is huge variety of what you can do. So your question was, I think, why is it important? Well, to go back to a quote I hear often, if you're just relying on OTAs, you're building your house on someone else's land, right? You're not, stop thinking that you're an Airbnb business. You're not, you're an accommodation business. And if you start to try and think about who is going to be booking your properties, that's the really, really good place to start, because you might just find there's a maintenance crew working down the road and they're going to be there for the next 6 months. So there's no point in having a hot tub in there. But what you really need to do is make sure that there's a Wi-Fi, a really, really good solid Wi-Fi and a desk so people can work from there. So it's about reacting to your local environment and thinking about your business in a very offline way. So every time you drive past a hotel and you see what vans are parked out front, and then you call that company. These are old tricks, right? But they work in the 21st century. So you call that company and say, look, I know you've got people traveling to your area. I've got a property here, which is going to be much more cost effective than the hotel you've just stayed in. So it's thinking about your business in a very offline way. You can then turn the tables such that you can use OTAs to supplement that. Also, you think about Google vacation rental and meta search and Google map search. If you can identify again, like in the crowd of where people might be browsing, you can turn something as normal as your website into a cash cow. Because again, if you've got good reviews from guests, if you've got good reviews from hosts, Google will favor your website, and again, it will favor it in its search and on its map functionality, and with that comes a great opportunity. So the hegemony of the OTA has never been challenged as much as it is today since the creation of OTA. It's really, really under challenge because of AI, because of meta search, and because consumers are getting savvier around where they can find the best deal. And I wonder right now, if you were to poll consumers at what they think the most important thing is around booking, I'm going to say what it is without data, so forgive me. This is clearly just an opinion. I would say it's price and feeling that the website's secure, so their credit card details are going to be secure and not potentially be cloned.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, saving on these big commission fees is a huge thing for owners. And, instead of generating direct bookings, you save a lot of money. And so your profits increase. We're ultimately doing this as a business. So it is important. But what are some other main advantages of direct bookings? Because it's not just about the cash, is it?
No, you're right. And I think the most important thing really is that idea that you're in so controlling your distribution, you're getting more of the bookings you want in your property. So if you have set up a home for workers, then you're targeting those. You've built it in that way, and you're creating that flow of getting a return customer. Same thing. If you're building, if your desire is to get honeymooning couples, you're starting to pivot towards marketing channels that promote it to honeymooning couples. So you're getting the right type of guests coming through. That will only increase your reviews and increase sort of how popular your listings appear is the fact that people will say, oh my God, that we had the most amazing weekend here. So it's just taking a more tailored approach will give you more freedom so that you're not just sat in the queue behind the OTA and then you're at mercy of whatever terms and conditions they change one week or whatever they decide to do the week after. It also will allow you to understand when it comes to growth, the types of additional properties you should be trying to take on. Or, is there an opportunity to arbitrage? Is there an opportunity to buy, develop instead of just managing and hosting? It's just that it's like, if you flip your mindset to being, I've got an accommodation business and I put it on all the channels too. I've got a hospitality business and these are my guests. How do I serve these guests better? Clearly more opportunity comes from there. There is, I think, a fear factor a little bit that people say, well, I know where I am within the OTA. So I would counter that and say one advantage of direct bookings is if you use tools to make the booking process safer, you are getting more. You're not necessarily going, well, I don't want to take it off platform because I know the platform does the vetting. You can do that vetting yourself. You can also find a way to protect the booking yourself through using a third-party company. Obviously, we are one of those companies. You'll get more than just the product, though. You'll also get that chance to start bonding with your guests before they arrive, right? Because you're receiving more data. You can, in your journey, in your guest journey, find out why they're coming, so you can start to tailor the experience. Again, it's not just about monetizing, right? But so I'm not going to say it's all about upsells because I think it's not necessarily upsells, but I mean just some of that stuff you can do for free. Why are you coming? Would you like us to put some champagne in the fridge? All of that sort of stuff. So it's taking control of, it's changing the mindset to, oh, I'm booking on Airbnb or booking.com and this person is supplying it, to I'm booking with someone that set up their own approach to how they want to their accommodation to be seen. They're asking me all the questions they want to ask me. And again, I understand when I go there, I'm staying in their home. I'm not staying at an Airbnb. And the benefits are multifaceted. Again, I think probably the most important one is that you're learning who your guest is and what they enjoy about your property, and you're encouraging that two-way conversation such that you can keep improving and keep either finding additional properties or improving the ones that you already have.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately you have happy guests staying in your property, which is one of the main things as well. And happy guests means they'll come back and recommend it to people, and just everybody's happy then. So I'm glad you agree that direct bookings is really important, Leo. When owners are just getting started, what are some challenges that they might have sort of transitioning to taking direct bookings, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, it can feel a bit scary, right? Because I imagine most hosts now, it's a fairly obvious statement, most hosts now will take their first booking on an OTA. They won't take it independently if they're only just getting started now. So it's challenging to understand where to go first and how to get that booking. Gurus in the space will tell you that actually if you just send everybody in your phone book a WhatsApp message asking if anybody needs accommodation, that might be even the best way to start. I like that as an idea. I do. I can get on board with that. But it is very hard to see yourself in that way because you probably do want some guardrails in place. It's probably nice to know that like the accounting's all been sorted. You can work out the financial side of it quite easily. And if you're hosting on someone else's behalf as well, they will have questions around safety. Where are these guests coming from? How are you vetting them? That's obviously where a product like ours was to come in. Well, I think the challenge would be where to start. And my view is that you have to build take from a template from a website building company. You have to take a really, really, really good website. You have to have that. You have to have that set up, and the pictures need to showcase more than the limited pictures you can put on an OTA listing. Right? You have to do more to create the wow factor around your listing. If it's more than one, you can group it as one website and start to talk about your collection in a very aspirational way. So, it's not just I've got 5 properties in Devon. It's, we are this luxury collection around this village. This is our ethos. So it's talk about your ethos. So it starts to build out the brand from the word go around what it is you're trying to do. So put your best foot forward with a website, and then make sure on the back end that your payment gateway is secure, because you don't want anyone's card details to be cloned. And then you're using things like vetting to make sure that you know who that guest is. in the best possible way, you're making sure that they are using real information. You can decide whether you want to add an ID check into that process, or you just want to find out more about them. And that would be the first thing to me. And then I would say, repeating myself, on day one, I would be getting all of my hosts to make sure they're leaving positive reviews about me on that website. And I would also find a way to really quickly incentivize any guest who comes to stay with you to leave a review on that website as well. So not just review me on Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo, review me on that website. And there's ways you can do that. You can automate those comms so it goes out, and put something within the property to say how important reviews are, so you're just reminding people as a nice visual guide. So you're building up your online presence. We talked about it as well. What can go alongside that is social media. That does also seem to be a really quick win. And I always have these conversations with, I'm not an expert in this at all, so I'm not going to pretend I am, but it's showcasing, attach onto anything about your natural environment, and where you are. Like, why would someone come to the Cotswolds? Why would someone come to Devon? Why would someone come to Brighton? Attach onto all those conversations and make sure that people can see that you're one of the accommodation options in that area.
Yeah, it's all very well having this amazing website that you spent a lot of time on and creating all the imagery and all the copy, but actually you need to let people know that your website's there and direct traffic to it. So that's really important.
Patience as well, right? It's patience, isn't it? It's like, as in, I think, like, if you there's obviously like a ton of ways you can get direct booking. That you're the expert on this. Like, and I've named a few. And anytime you get that direct booking, it's a technique that you can use again, right? So it's like you're learning something on the journey, right? So it's like, make sure that every single day you're thinking about how you can diversify distribution. And even if nothing comes of it on that day, that leads you on to another thought and another thought and another thought. And also, what are your goals as a business? So are you someone that wants to scale to 500 properties or even 100 properties? Or are you someone that just wants 10? And what you want one listing, and that's all you want. That's your strategy is then going to be affected by that. Because if you are on the way to getting 500 listings and you're hell bent on that, then it's a different sort of website you're building. It's a different sort of distribution strategy. If it's one, then it might just be all about how bespoke and wonderful this cottage is, this holiday home is, and how many eyes you can get on it through using media, using traditional media, local print, whatever it might be. So it's working out what your strategy is, but patience. Like, don't do nothing just because the OTA is doing it. And clearly you aren't going to do it every single day, but just having that constant thought about, like, okay, this is great. 80% of my bookings come through the OTAs today. How do I get that to 70% next year, and so on and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great ideas there. I work with a lot of owners who are just getting started and perhaps have only ever used the OTAs or an agency. So I want to talk a little bit about the fears around setting up direct bookings and how to start taking them. And one of the main things that comes across is that Airbnb and these agencies have guest verification software. So you're happy that who's staying in your property, and a lot of owners that I work with are terrified about that kind of thing. What would you say to them and advise them?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we often meet people at the jumping off point, which is, I've had a bad experience on an OTA. Maybe they haven't paid me out for something that I should have got paid out for, or maybe I had a bad guest, or maybe the bookings haven't come in the way they promised. So for whatever reason, I'm looking to like diversify and maybe build my own direct booking website as well. At that jumping off point, you're then thinking, oh, okay, well, even me as a host, what I liked about the comfort blanket of the OTA was knowing that there was protection in place in case something went wrong, and vetting going on up front. So vetting up front and protection, prevention and cure. And it's really interesting because let's go back again. I'm showing my age again, but let's go back to the days of pre the internet of things, where people bought things and they made phone calls, and you sent checks in the post and all of that sort of archaic stuff that seems make-believe now. You would never dream of letting someone into a property without meeting them in person. So that would maybe be your cleaner, or maybe be you as the business owner, because you probably weren't as busy, and it was one of those things you probably valued doing to make sure you could get that repeat business. So I get it. You're sat in the bathtub now, and people are booking, and people are maybe turning up at your property because you have a keyless entry system. So you have to try and replicate what you've lost by not doing that face-to-face stuff with technology. And that might be biometric facial recognition ID software, so that they, the name, that the face matches the passport, and it's not just a picture of the face and not the real face. And then a deep dive on those details, whether it be just finding out the validity of, like, is the email genuine? Is it being used? Has it been involved in a data breach? Same thing with the phone number. You could do a criminal records check. There's lots of checks you can do on people. But you can also use that if you are still doing face-to-face check-ins. You can use that ahead of time so that you're not at the door trying to guess if they're a good person or not. We know that, unfortunately, people use properties for things that they haven't told the host they're going to do in them. Commercial, so you might do weddings, events, like paid-for events. You might like host a dinner party and make money from it, or you might do worse. There's all the worst: dealing drugs, criminal activity, horrible things. It all goes on. I can guarantee that you will get a higher percentage of those if you're not using any technology to try and mitigate that. And that some of it's performative too. So it's the telling your guest on your website that they will go through an ID check, that they will go through your pre-check-in form, which will include some checks against fraud and credit card fraud and all that stuff. So it's informing people that it's going to happen. So part of it's performative, part of it's like essential because you need to do it anyway. And then it's making sure that if still a guest that on the surface or in reality was a good guest, but just had one too many drinks and started misbehaving during the holiday, if something then breaks or gets damaged, that you have some protection in place in the form of damage protection from an independent third party like us, so that you can fix up that apartment and home and get it back on the road being used again as quickly as possible. And if you own your own property, clearly you want that because it's your space and you want to protect it. If you're managing it for someone else, it's a really good thing to have in your pitch deck. Oh, by the way, don't worry, if something breaks, you're protected through this damage protection. The other thing you might want to do is OTAs often collect deposits for you on your behalf. So you might want to have an independent way of collecting a deposit, or using damage waivers where you collect a fee up front and you expect to make more money in your damage waiver than you have to pay out for damages over the course of a year. And in so doing, that anything happens in a small way, you can just use the cash to pay for it. Again, whether you manage or whether you own, it's still really, really important. But I think it's even more important in the managed space, because the damage waiver thing, because your host will often come back and go, oh, there's 4 plates missing or things like that. And if you want to be really hands-on, you can always say, well, don't worry, I collect this small fee, so I've actually got some cash available to pay for these things, which only helps your Google reviews about your service. And happy guests, because they're not being chased for small stuff, more likely to leave positive reviews. Happy hosts, because your service is going the extra mile for them. So, I feel like softwares like ours we meet people at that point where they're realizing there's a world outside of one of the OTAs, and they're ready to start professionalizing and taking that really seriously. And that could be with one listing, or that could be with 500 listings. As I say, professionalization has got nothing to do with size. It's to do with how you're treating the business and what you're saying. But clearly, you can turn this into a very profitable thing for yourself, because if you are managing, then you set all this up, but you can also take a revenue from it if your hosts are paying for it. So there's ways of monetizing it. The other side too is you can also use your guest journey to sell products to your guests, things around cancellation, cancel for any reason, or booking protection in case there's problems during the stay and they have to be relocated. So you can monetize this as well. So it's not just about protecting yourself and your host, it's also about creating revenue for you and your host if you want to.
Yeah, and these systems are quite, they sound really scary, but they're quite easy to set up. And once they're set up, they're there and they're running in the background for you, aren't they?
That's right. So, any SaaS business is trying to wrap the whole service around to make it really, 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 really straightforward for the customer. So if you think, as the host, you are the customer. So you have a dashboard where you can see all of the guests that have gone through your system, the status. So are they verified, or have for some reason they've been flagged and rejected because their details are fraudulent? You'd be informed. And then all of the revenue you've collected and all the bookings that have been protected. If you're a guest, your interaction would be a link to start that process and fill in their details that the host has asked for. And if you the host have a logo for your company or your property, that will be thrown into that journey, because the idea is that they see it as your check-in journey, not ours. We're referenced at the bottom because we power it, but It's the idea that if it's ABC Villas, they see that logo for ABC Villas, they click through and they start going through your check-in process, and you can curate that in however you want. Ask them questions, why they're coming. Do you want to sign a form? That's often a good thing. Put your rental agreement in there as well, in case they try and do a chargeback for service reasons. You can say, well, look, it says here on the form that, if we forget the towels, we have to deliver them in 2 hours, which we did. So you do have to pay, because often people use that as a way of not paying. So again, it's just that idea of helping you professionalize. And if you use a software like ours, or any software of that nature, it's there. It's all been built with you in mind, so that you can just plug it in. And if you're using a PMS, you can automate it through your PMS. If you're not using a PMS, then we can send the links out independently within your system. I imagine most at this point, if they're using multi-channel, would be using a PMS. But again, it's all built so that you don't have to maintain it. It fits around your existing ecosystem.
Yeah, and those systems are really important to have in place when you're first taking direct bookings, and as you say, relatively easy to set up and get in place, and stop being a barrier for you to take direct bookings. Another question I get asked a lot, or sort of a fear around this taking direct bookings, is the time. And a lot of owners think they have to send emails to every single guest, personally, and there's loads of time managing, when the next deposit is due or the next amount is due, and then I got to email them and ask them for a review, and time is a big thing. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think your time is precious, but there's nothing on that list that you can't automate. So, everything can be triggered. Like if you work with a SaaS business that's providing you the protection, it can integrate with your PMS such that everything you want to send can go out from one unified inbox that you can just watch happening, whether it be post-stay, please leave a review, pre-stay, what can we do to make your experience better, and can you go through this process for me? So and AI is making that automation even easier now as well. So make sure you're working with systems, make sure you're working with companies who have systems that mean there is no legwork for you, and that is very, very, very possible. It just requires you at the start to plan what you want your comms flow to be with your guest and with your owners, quite frankly, right? Let's consider both as customers, because there's a chance of both to review you. But yeah, make sure you've got to build that once, and then there's a flow, and then you'll know, and then you just need to have that kind of, okay, if my guest chooses to do this, what happens next, right? And that's where you might need to do some manual work. So if I get left a 1-star review, okay, well, clearly I want to pick up the phone and work out why I left that 1-star review. But if you're doing your job properly, you should never get the 1-star review, but if you do, it should be very rare. And so all of the automated processes can continue. And again, if you work with a software company in the space, they'll be able to build that for you, because they'll understand what your use case is. And I think that, yeah, it is something I hear for sure when people are jumping off. Is it going to be additional work? But once you've gone through that, once you've done the setup, it's liberating. It's completely liberating to have that all working for you whilst you're sat focusing on getting more properties and finding more ways to distribute your product.
Exactly. Yeah. So initially a bit of investment in your time getting everything set up, but once it's set up, it just runs for you, doesn't it? And
yeah, I see that
time back.
Yeah, and I see that across the industry when you speak to people. I often meet people who've got. I was chatting to a lady in San Diego 2 days ago, and she said she's got 25 listings, and she's automated everything. And she's like, I'm getting a bit bored. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, as someone like, I'm not the most organized of individuals. You should see what my dishwasher looks like. It's a proof, I think. It's always the dishwasher that really gives them away. Okay, so look at the dishwasher, see what state it's in. No, I'm not the most organized of people, but I find it's it's much easier now because you can use tools and things to build it for you. And again, sure, there's one person who's found a way to do 25 listings without it, or people use virtual assistants, whatever it might be. It is all possible. It is all done. And the people who are trying to sell you their services understand that. They understand that you're really, what it is that you only have a certain amount of time in the day. And if their software can save you time, it stops you having to hire an extra assistant, etc. Which might then help you streamline what you're trying to achieve from your business. Not to mention the revenue that you can generate from a software like ours, right? Which is through damage waiver revenue or guest upsell revenue. And that revenue also gives you more options in terms of how you want to expand and grow. So yeah, it's saving time and producing revenue, I think, are the two golden pillars if you can get those two right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final sort of barrier I keep coming across is the tech side of things, and people being like, right, I need a payment gateway, I need a PMS. You mentioned a biometric ID. I don't even know.
Yeah.
What about the tech? I'm not a techie person. How do I get started?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Start simple, right? Start simple. So, you can buy boilerplate websites from website providers that have all these things built into them, and there are a few big ones in the space that are very, very good. That are really, really good. Smart people have built them. Or you go with the website that your PMS is the website your PMS provides. They're also pretty good because they have all the things built in. They can also instantly make sure that it's aggregated so that you're not double booking. Somewhere on Airbnb, Booking.com, Verbo, or your direct, you're making sure that when one books, the other bits of availability get closed off. So I would start super simple. And if you're not with a PMS, I would definitely go with one of the well-known website builders in our space, and then they'll have done a lot of these integrations, right, to make sure that things like your ID check is in there. If you were working with someone who didn't have a product like ours attached, we would find a way to integrate it such that all of those things would be triggered during the booking process. So again, it's all happening, and you would just go to your dashboard to see if they'd gone through the ID check yet, or to see if they'd gone through this check. And again, this is all optional. You don't have to have all these checks. You can pick and choose what you want. But again, the software companies will integrate with each other for you, or they'll have off-the-shelf version, which mean that you just send a link at this point, and the link will be embedded into your email comms automatically. So again, these guys are solutions experts, and they'll find ways to thread it together for you. But again, things like a payment gateway, I think there's one which massively leads the market, which has probably got about 95% of the customers using it, I think, across the industry. Anyone who's building a website will definitely have an integration with them. So whilst you might need separate accounts with different providers, you won't need to do any of the mechanics of the integration part yourself. So again, it's all stuff you can do. And again, some providers will have even white labeled products and will just offer you one lump, so you just have to pay one person. That might be the sort of person you are. You're going to end up probably paying a bit more if you just work with someone that's lumping you in with everything. But it's easier, right? Versus having to go to each software and individually buy it. But again, like I say, it's about signing up. It's not about having to do that integration part yourself. Does that help? I feel like maybe.
Yeah, and again, it's all about that sort of initial investment and the setup, and all of these systems have a great support team and helps there to help you through it. Or if you want to completely outsource it and let someone else set it up for you as well, that's also an option with some of them, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's that, like I say, they're all after your attention, aren't they? So they're trying to do anything they can to make sure that the use of the product is as straightforward as possible. Also, I would say, I always try and remind people of this: you meet the software where it currently is in its journey, but your input, your feedback will dictate how that software develops. People don't, I think, take that into consideration enough. So like, you voice your, oh, do you know what? It's great that the software does X, Y, and Z, but can it also do this? Should it also do that? And that feedback's normally quite quick to action if you've picked a good software provider. So choosing your software providers, knowing that they will do anything they can for their customers is super important, because that if there's enough people that want something, developers will build it.
Yeah, amazing. Hopefully, the listeners who are in this weird space at the moment and thinking about taking direct bookings, hopefully Leo sort of reassured you around those main fears around getting started. Leo, I wanted to ask you about, obviously you've mentioned seeing the industry change all the way, from your dad booking holidays, and I'd love to know what you foresee the trends to be in the holiday rental industry, that property owners should be aware of in 2025.
It's a good question. So as long as in 12 months you don't sort of chop this up, Katie, and throw it back at me on social media and say all the things that Leo got wrong, happy to have a go. I believe that as accommodation providers, you will see an increase in bookings through social media. That's the first thing. We touched on that slightly, but I'll re-emphasize that. I think it's important. So, influencers and the trends around, like, oh, look at me in Corsica, or look at me in Corfu, look at me in New York City, like all that stuff. I feel like TikTok are one to watch because I think they're going to find smart ways to feed you ads to ensure that if you're in the mood to buy that city break or that secluded rural experience, there's a way to do it within there. So be at the party, make sure you're there. It's like, I mean, who wouldn't be spending all their time on social media doing it, because it's just such a great platform if you get it right. So I think that will increase. I also think that people looking for outdoor adventure. So I think outdoor travel is on the rise. People especially the younger generation, are healthier, fitter, want to do like, hiking and adventure based things. Make sure that you're showcasing the possibility of doing that around or near your accommodation, or what they call it, set jetting, which I think is quite a fun way of putting it. So like, what's in your area that's been in films, TVs, movies, all that sort of stuff. So it's it's not just adventure. It's people that going, I want to go and do the Game of Thrones stuff in Dubrovnik or whatever it might be. So it's thinking about, it's people coming to an area to think about not necessarily being in the accommodation, but what they can do outside of the accommodation as well. And again, I think beating the crowds and escaping the crowds is more popular at the moment than trying to immerse yourself in them for whatever reason. So that's another trend. And the other one would be over tourism. So I think everyone's talking about this one at the moment. We talk about it every summer because record numbers of people are coming into Europe. So ethical, sustainable, like making less of an impact when you travel. Like, how did you get here? Oh, I got here on the train instead of flying. We actually didn't use the car, or we've asked if there's an electric car charger in the property because we're going to rent a car from the airport and we want to rent an electric one, whatever it might be. So again, like how do we kind of make sure we're not adding to the problems when we are traveling? We have to be ethical. We have to be concerned. Like if there's an over tourism problem in an area, we're going to go down the coast to that quieter spot. If there's a pollution problem, how do we make sure we're not adding to it? If we're using a natural beauty spot like a mountain or a river, like, is it one we should be using, or actually is it just getting decimated by too many people trying to hike it at the same time? So yeah, I think anything you can do to create an actionable insight from any of that would benefit you.
Yeah, I promise not to chop this in 12 months' time and give a review of whether Leo's predictions were right or wrong.
You can do it if I was right.
We'll see next year. Just as we wrap up, Leo, what's one tip that you could give an owner? It can be absolutely anything. What's one tip that you'd give?
Oh, that's a really good question. So from my perspective, it would be, it's not my tip. I took it from the different bits of education I've got along the way, but it's thinking within your own network as well. So not like starting with who you know and what you know. Like people think you have to start by having, by making a lot of decisions around what your brand is and what your website is, and and who this unknown person is. Start within your own network around like WhatsApp or Instagram. Start that way, or walk down the road to the pub and see if they've got guests that often ask whether there's a place to stay, or when the pub's full, if you've got rooms above the pub, what do you do? So start within your own network. Start small. Start local.
Yeah, interesting. Great tip. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I think it's been a really useful episode, and hopefully given those owners who are a bit worried about taking direct bookings and taking that plunge some confidence and some ideas about how to go about it. So where can people find out more about you and Truvi or Superhog?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to find me, the place to start, Leo Walton, or we're at Truvi.com, and that's Truvi, TRUVI.com, or Superhog. We're in the middle of transitioning. We're going through it. So we do answer to both. We'll probably answer to both for a long time, but we are Truvi moving forward. So yeah, you can find us at either for now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for spending part of your changeover with me here on Live from the Hive. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to follow or leave a quick review. It really helps others find the show. And if you want more support with generating more bookings this year, head over to theholidayhive.com or search The Holiday Hive on Instagram for more useful resources, templates, and checklists. Until next time, good luck with the changeovers and keep doing what you do best.